In 1980, I was 10 years old and I was in an all-boys boarding school in Scotland. I stayed in a large dorm room. There were 11 other boys, all my age. And one Saturday morning, around about 2 a.m., we hadn't gone to sleep that night. It was the weekend. The other boys decided it would be a really good idea for me to take all my clothes off, to sneak down into the basement and to steal a bar of chocolate. Now, I want to be really clear at this point. I am not, and I never have been, an exhibitionist or a naturalist. At the time, I was a chubby, shy, timid 10-year-old boy who was petrified of being seen by other boys when I was naked. But it was a dare. And there were certain rules that went along with dares in the boarding school. You could say no. That was your right. But there was consequences. And you didn't really know what those consequences were going to be. So I thought about it and I thought, you know what? It's 2 a.m. It's dark. I can get down there really quick, get the chocolate, get back up here. Nobody will see me and it'll be done. So I decided to bite the bullet and do it. So before you knew it, I was in my birthday suit out in the hallway when the boys slammed the door on me. It was dark, but it wasn't really pitch dark. There was a little bit of moonlight coming through the windows. The dorm room was on the 3rd floor, so I had to sneak quietly along to the stairwell. The only noise you could hear was an occasional creak of the floorboards. When I got to each corner, I looked around very carefully to make sure there was no one, and then I'd keep creeping. So I went down the stairs, I got to the 2nd floor, crept down, I got to the ground floor, and eventually I got down to the basement. Now luckily, the pantry door was open, and I went into the pantry, but in the pantry it was pitch black. So I closed my eyes really tight, I tried to adjust, and when I opened up I could see kind of shapes and shadows, so I reached around for quite a while, and eventually I found a bar of chocolate. I grabbed it to my chest, and it's at that point I realized my heart was pumping. The adrenaline was throwing through me. I was really, really nervous and scared. And I held that bar of chocolate, and it was the first glimmer of hope I had. Then I retraced my steps slowly all the way back up, creeping, checking around the corners, up the stairs. And eventually I got to the 3rd floor, and could you believe it? I could see the dorm room door. And that's when I started to feel hope. I started to realize I could do this. I got close, I reached over for the doorknob, and the door was locked. And that's when I heard snickering and laughing from the other side of the door. Suddenly the lights went on, and I looked around, and standing over to my right was the matron. Now the matron was an older lady. She was very stern, and for a 10-year-old boy in the boarding school, she was the most scary person on planet Earth. She was stood with her arms crossed. Her glass eye was looking over this direction, but her good eye was looking right at me. All I could think to do was to take the bar of chocolate and hide my private parts. And she kept looking at me sternly. So I said absolutely nothing. I was a deer in the headlights. I had no way to explain why I'm standing there naked, outside of curfew hours, with stolen food in my hand. And I can assure you that all of those things resulted in pretty serious consequences and disciplinary action. But what I want to ask you, you've heard that story, and I want you to put yourself in my shoes, and I want to ask you, does that sound like a lucky story? Do you think I was lucky?
You're lucky to be here.
If you look at in the current PC world, there's a lot of red flags. There's nudity, there's probably bullying. If you look at the teacher who put fear into me, you know, that's intimidation. That's not acceptable anymore. So there's a lot of things I think that mean that wouldn't happen to me today. But I look at it differently. I took on a challenge and I did it. And the fact that I did it and made it and put up with the consequences, it actually raised my stock amongst the other boys. It helped me fit in with them. It actually led to friendships. I faced being naked, and that was a fear of mine, and that helped me grow. The biggest lesson I learned from that was that no matter how bad something looks, it can always get worse. So even now, to this day, it's taught me to always read the fine print. Always check, because no matter how bad it looks, you got to ask, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? Because it can always get worse than you think it will be. And I've kept that lesson with me till this very day. So I think it's extremely lucky. I'm lucky I was born in the 70s. I was lucky I was brought up in the 80s. And I wasn't sheltered and put in cotton wool and protected from experiences like that. It's because of that experience as a chubby 10-year-old boy with just a bar of chocolate. That was one of my first early steps to becoming a man.